You are wasting 80% of your time. Stop working hard.
Okay, so let's dive right in. What if I told you there's this powerful, kind of hidden law of nature that governs success in business, in our relationships, and yeah, even our own happiness? And what if I told you that we've probably been getting it completely wrong our entire lives?
I mean, really think about this. What if most of your stress, most of your effort, most of the things on that never-ending to-do list are pretty much a waste of time? Just let that sink in for a second.
Now, I gotta be honest, when I first read this quote, 80% of our results come from just 20% of our efforts, I was like, no way. It just sounds too simple, right? It feels like a nice self-help idea, but not, a hard fact of life.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But the whole idea behind this principle is that the world, it isn't a 50-50 balanced place at all. It is fundamentally, predictably, and honestly, radically imbalanced. Let's get into what that really means.
Okay, so the 80-20 principle isn't just some clever business trick. It's a real, provable pattern where just a few things, what the book calls the vital few, are responsible for almost all of the outcomes. So it's less of a business hack and more of a law of nature. And once you start looking for this pattern, you see it literally everywhere. In business, it's a classic. 20% of your customers probably give you 80% of your profits. In your own life, 20% of your time is where 80% of your proudest achievements come from. It even applies to problems, right? Like a tiny fraction of bugs in software cause most of the crashes. And on a huge scale, it helps explain big things like wealth inequality. Wow, that customer one is crazy. It basically means most companies spend a ton of energy on 80% of their customers who barely matter to the bottom line.
And the guy who really blew this idea up for the mainstream is Richard Koch. He was a business consultant who took this principle and showed everyone just how deep it runs, not just in business, but in every corner of our lives.
So, understanding the principle, that's one thing. But the real magic, the part that changes things, happens when you start to think this way. And it requires a huge shift in how you see, everything.
So think about it. Conventional wisdom, the stuff we're all taught, is 50-50 logic. It says every task on your list has equal weight, that if you just put in more effort, you'll get more rewards. That hard work is the only key. Well, 80-20 logic comes along and just flips the table. It says, nope, a few tasks are way more important. It says effort and reward are pretty much unrelated. Wow, that is a total paradigm shift. It's not about working harder, but working smarter and way more selectively.
And Koch breaks it down into two ways to apply this. There's 80-20 times analysis, which is all about the hard data, and 80-20 thinking, which is more intuitive, more of a gut feeling. And you might be wondering, okay, when do I use which one?
Well, for example, you'd use analysis to crunch the numbers and figure out which of your products are making 80% of your profit. You need data for that. But you'd use thinking when you glance at your inbox, see 10 emails, and your gut just tells you which one or two actually need a proper reply right now. The whole point is to train your brain to stop assuming balance and start looking for the imbalance. Start thinking in terms of skewness.
All right, let's get super practical with this. This is where the 80-20 principle can completely transform your career or your business. We're talking about hacking your work to get massive results.
Let's circle back to that customer example, because the implication is just profound. If 20% of your customers are giving you 80% of your profit, you should be pouring almost all of your energy into that small group. It even suggests you should maybe, fire your worst customers.
Exactly. Businesses should be completely obsessed with that top 20%. But big companies, they almost never do this. They get so bogged down serving the trivial many, that 80% of customers who don't make much money but take up tons of time and resources. A great success story here is IBM. Way back, they figured out that 20% of their software's code was doing 80% of the valuable work. So what did they do? They focused all their energy on optimizing just that vital 20%, and it made their systems incredibly more efficient.
So Koch gives us these 10 golden rules for business, and the first 5 are all about finding this intense focus. It's about specializing in a niche you actually enjoy, I love that one, becoming the absolute expert, and then aiming all your effort at the things that give you the highest return in that market. And then the next 5 rules are all about creating massive leverage. Learn from the best, delegate everything that isn't your core 20% strength, and use other people's money and talent to just amplify everything you're doing. So when you boil it all down, it's 2 things: intense focus and massive leverage.
Absolutely. But as powerful as this all is for business, it might be even more powerful when we apply it to our own lives, to our time, our relationships, our happiness.
Think about that for a second. 80% of happiness occurs in 20% of our time. Most of our joy comes from a few key moments. Wow, that really hit me. It's not the day-to-day stuff, it's those peak experiences that really matter. So, the multi-million-dollar question is, how do you find that 20%? How do you actually identify those specific moments and activities so you can, do more of them? Well, Koch calls this identifying your happiness islands. The exercise is so simple. You literally sit down and make a list of the times in your life you felt the most joy. Then you break it down. Who was I with? What was I doing? You look for the patterns, the common themes. That's your 20%. And the instruction is simple. Do more of that. It's such a simple but powerful exercise. I'm going to do this tonight.
And you can do the exact same thing for your productivity. Think about your achievement islands. You know those times you just got an insane amount done in a short period of time. What was your mindset like? Were you alone? Was it early in the morning? Analyze the conditions of your peak performance, and then the goal becomes trying to replicate those conditions as often as you can.
This applies so perfectly to relationships, too. It's so easy to spread ourselves thin trying to keep up with hundreds of friends and acquaintances. But the 80-20 principle says we should focus our social energy on the vital few friendships, the ones that bring us real, authentic joy and support. It's quality over quantity, for sure.
And all of this leads to the real emotional heart of the 80-20 principle. It's not just about getting more done. It's about finding true freedom.
And this quote just brilliantly lays out the ultimate promise. The 80-20 principle, like the truth, can make you free. When I first read that, I thought, free from what though? Free from the pressure to do everything? From the guilt of not being busy all the time?
Yeah, both. It's freedom from the tyranny of the trivial many. It's the freedom that comes when you just reject the idea that being busy is a good thing. This chart says it all, right? Most people spread their time out thinly over tons of low-value tasks. The 80-20 way is to concentrate all that energy on the few things that really move the needle and just let the rest go.
My absolute favorite idea from the whole book is this concept of being intelligent and lazy. It's so backwards. The idea is you use your intelligence to find and execute on that vital 20%, and then you have the courage to be lazy by ruthlessly ignoring the other 80%. So being lazy can actually make you more successful. I can get behind that.
Okay, so let's bring this all home to the big one, money. Because this principle is arguably the single most important secret to building wealth.
Just like everything else we've talked about, wealth is not evenly distributed. The vast majority of financial returns, we're talking around 80%, come from a very small minority of your investments or your strategies. So the 80-20 path to wealth is incredibly simple, but it's not easy. First, you have to analyze your investments. Find the 20% that are doing all the heavy lifting. Second, you double down on those winners. And third, this is the hard part most people skip, you have to prune the losers. You have to sell the 80% of your portfolio that's just sitting there doing nothing. Just like with customers or tasks, focus is the absolute key to building wealth.
And that brings us to the final question I want to leave you with. What is the single most important 20% in your life, your career, your money, your happiness that you've been neglecting? I mean, really think about it. Identifying and focusing on that one thing could change absolutely everything. It's not about adding more to your plate. It's about finding the courage to take most of it off.